cold talks section, because you were going, that was a lot of announcements for you. Great job.
Yeah.
And as you guys can see, thank you to Heather. They got me this beautiful Tim Talks thing that my family's making fun of me for now, but I like it. So they're just going to have to live with it. I'm going to hang it in my bedroom. I'm sure my wife will love that. So yes, as she mentioned before, you guys have seen my other Tim Talks. I was a contractor for quite a while. I did a lot of mini split installations. So I'm pretty familiar of the ins and outs, and I'm sure most of you gentlemen are as well, or ladies and gentlemen. But hopefully we can kind of go through this system together, come up together with something as far as different applications. As you see, I'm going to do the head cam today. We're not going to do any PowerPoint, which is great, and I enjoy that much more. But when we go through the putting the reservoir and the condensation pump on here, you'll see some of the problems that you can come across if you've never put a condensation pump on a mini split. At least these mini split condensation pumps. There's definitely a lot of things that you need to consider. But before we get our hands dirty here, I want to go and I'm going to share my screen. And what I'm going to do is we are using the Aspen pump. That's this pump right here. This is what I'm using today. But Aspen has more than just this style of pump. And I just wanted to show the contractors what else is available. Just in case you have a job that may be a specific application. I just want to make sure that you know all the options available to you, so that way you're not trying to install this pump in an application that may not be most beneficial for you. They do make, like I said, they make different pumps to put in different areas. So it's just good to know these things when you're going into an install. And I bring this up because when you're installing these mini split condensation pumps, I'm a firm believer that on the mini splits, use the gravity drain, the primary drain, as much as possible. I really only recommend using these like it's absolutely necessary for a few reasons. One, it's another thing that could possibly fail, right? Two, that's one more item that you have to work into your maintenance. And you'll see that the reservoir is small. If you're in a high humidity environment, like commercial setting, you may not even want to use one of these. If you're in a commercial setting, you may just want to use the gravity drain into a standard Little Giant or whatever else we're offering at that time, a condensation pump, something that's more robust and that can handle the higher humidity loads that are in commercial settings, or maybe down in the Keys or something like that, where you have homes or that people come in and out. You know what I'm talking about. High humidity. This may not be the best. Well, I wouldn't probably use this if it was high humidity. Now, unfortunately, sometimes the way things look is very important to the homeowner, but a wet wall doesn't look too well. So, with that being said, let's go ahead. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll see if that works. Can you guys see my screen? No, it doesn't look like it, right?
It's just a white, it's blank.
Oh, it's blank? Okay.
Yeah, it's just a white screen.
Stop sharing again. Let me try this again. Let's try this. Okay. Let's go to Aspen. I go to Aspen's website. I wonder why it's showing that screen here. Yeah, I did this before and it worked out great. Now let me go to it now. It's going to give me some problems. And it's just a white screen right now?
No, now we see it. You're good.
Okay, good, perfect. Okay, let me move this out of here. Okay, so Aspen pumps, that's what we're going to be using today. Go to our products, and I select mini pumps, and then you're going to see here, this is the pump that we're actually going to be going over, which is the not the mini orange, but it's actually the maxi orange, what I'm going to be talking about today. But some of these pumps are pumps that I actually didn't know was an option quite a few years ago, and I would have loved to have known that some of these were an option, like this mini white. The mini white is great because basically it's going to go underneath the mini split, and it has a nice cover over it. It's got a nice cover over it, so if you need something that's easier to access, and it goes right underneath the mini split there, so it looks good. It makes servicing the condensation pump much easier. It has a bigger reservoir, so if you're in a home that has a higher humidity load and you don't want to run a regular condensation pump, this is probably a good option for you. Like I said, it still looks good, but it has a bigger reservoir, and it mounts underneath the mini split, so it makes life a lot easier for the guys coming out there doing maintenances and trying to clean those up. It has a max lift of 33 feet. I don't really recommend using the max lift, because once it starts getting dirty and the water starts getting the algae buildup, it's going to reduce. It's going to make it a little harder for that pump to work. So I tell everybody, try to keep the lift as minimal as possible. Another great pump that they have that I like as well is this Maxi Lime. This is another one that, as you can see, it comes with a plastic cover, and this one has a max lift of 49 feet and a flow of 9 gallons an hour. So it can handle a good amount of water coming out of that unit. But what I really like about it is how it mounts, right? Again, once you install these pumps, one of the things you need to remember is you're going to have to service it and maintenance it. So something like this that mounts external, but with a nice cover, is going to make your life a lot easier, and especially for your technicians. And if you have guys that just go out and service systems, as you can see, it mounts right on the side of the unit, and it does come with a plastic cover. So it's going to make your life a lot easier, or whoever is serving a lot easier. These two options, I really like these two options. What we often sell are going to be the Maxi Orange, what we have today, and then the blue. This I think it's called Slim Blue, or let me see what we got here. The mini split pumps, the Mini Aqua. That's what it is. The Mini Aqua, the Maxi Orange, and the Mini Aqua. These are the most common ones that we sell, and they're great pumps. They work well. I haven't seen too many issues with them. The only job site that I've been to was a contractor had installed. This was on the West Coast. I don't know if they're watching today, but they put mini splits in tanning salon. So each room had a tanning booth, and the systems were they just really couldn't keep up. So one by one, they're basically going back with a standard condensation pump to go back, because there's just so much heat that's building up in there and so much water that these pumps, they can't keep up. They flow 3 gallons of water an hour, but I think those pumps they were working pretty hard. Plus, with that much condensation building up, they said that these little reservoirs were getting dirty quite often. So if you know it's going to be high humidity and you're going to have this pump running a lot, I recommend going with a standard condensation pump. You probably have to get a little creative. In this situation, it really wasn't too big a deal, because in those rooms that they had the tanning salon, one, it was this massive tanning booth that the customers would step into, but two, they had piping run up and electrical piping up and down the walls. It had an industrial look already. So at the end of the day, they ended up going that route. So just keep that in mind. These condensation pumps work great. In most cases, you will never have an issue with them. Most of your applications are probably not going to have much humidity unless it's in a garage. But if you're putting these in like a master bedroom or a guest bedroom, or somewhere where it's supplementing the existing air conditioning, there's a good chance you're rarely going to even see water pour out of that system, because this main central AC is going to dehumidify the home pretty well. So you won't always see water coming out of these. I've installed these quite a few homes where I'm waiting for that water. I don't want to leave the house until I see water flowing, like with most systems. And that's why a lot of times I tell my installers, like, don't leave until you see that water coming out. You wouldn't see it coming out because the humidity was already being removed by the central AC. So in most cases, this pump is not going to really work too hard. But in those high humidity installations, you need to make sure that you plan ahead. I'm going to go ahead and ask, can we go ahead and throw up our first survey question, Nicole?
Yes, we can.
There we go.
Okay, you guys
Okay.
should see it.
How many condensation pumps have you installed in mini split systems? 0, 1 to 10, 11 to 20, or 20 plus? Give you guys some time to answer that. This will give me a gauge on how important this class is, really. Because if you've never installed one of these before, then it's good that we're doing this class. And if you guys are all pros, well, maybe we can learn something new today. Or maybe I showed you something new as far as application. I guess I have to answer this too, don't I?
Hey, Tim, while we're waiting on
Sir.
the results of that, I just want to point out a couple things on the sheet you've got up here with the flow rates. Please keep in mind that 3.2 gallons per hour is the maximum flow. And at that 3.2 gallons, you only have maybe about a 6-inch lift, okay? Not that 33-foot lift. And same thing when you're looking at that 33-foot lift, that's only at 1.6 gallons. That drops drastically as you increase the gallons per hour flow rate. So just keep that in mind, that you're not always going to have a 33-foot lift. It's all going to depend on how much water you're flowing out of that mini split unit.
Absolutely. And even a sound level is something I'm going to talk about again later, that 70 or 25 dBs is pretty quiet, but when you're in your bedroom and you have some really light sleepers, that 25 decibels could almost seem like 100 decibels to some homeowners. So you want to keep that in mind when installing these, especially in bedrooms. All right. So we got the poll. All right. So the majority of you guys have not installed mini split, mini pumps, or condensation pumps and mini splits. So that's good. And we got a few of you that seem like experts. So if you guys, those of you that have installed quite a few of these, if you have any advice along the way or anything that you have come across, feel free to share that in the chat, because like I said, it does seem like the majority of the guys watching today have installed not many, if any at all. So yeah, as Todd said, you definitely, these max flow rates and this max lift, like I said, these mini split pumps, they work like a charm, right? But there's just things you got to consider. And we just want, like I said, with these, ideally, you just want to get the water up out of the mini split up into a drop ceiling, or if you're going through the back wall and you're going up in between the wall and you're drilling a hole through the top of the not the truss, but the what do they call it, the header of the wall. So you're going to go through the wall and you're going to drill your little hole and get the condensation line up into the attic. You just want to keep it as minimal as possible. You just don't push it to this limit. Let me see here. Let me see if there's anything else, any of these other applications that I want to show you. Let's see here. Our products. I really like that. Oops. I really like the one that goes the Maxi line. That's one I really like, and I like this mini white as well, just because of the ease of service of it, and they look good. And this is a mini lime, basically the same thing, just a little smaller. But like I said, these yes.
Your screen is not changing.
Oh, it's not changing.
Mm-mm.
Okay, well that's fine. Let me see. How's that?
Yep.
Is that better? Can you?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. This, like I said, thing you want to really keep in mind when installing these condensation pumps will be, where's it going? If it's going in a bedroom, you can. I would recommend going with the mini orange or the maxi orange, because you can actually install that up in the attic or above the ceiling. So it doesn't have to be installed inside the unit. So like I said, you'll see we're going to actually go over this in just a second. I think that's about all I wanted to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen sharing there. And we're going to go to the head cam. Nicole, if you could switch that camera to the other one, and I'm going to put the head cam on and we'll get our hands dirty.
Yes. Do you want me to put up the second poll question that we have as well before you?
Actually,
in?
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great while I'm getting this set up.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and read it. How many high wall mini split systems do you install in a month? Give you guys a couple more seconds to answer.
How's it looking?
One more second and then I will read them off to you.
No problem.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So it looks like 46% of the people who responded have installed 0. 50% have installed 1 to 5, and 4% have installed 6 to 10.
Okay, that's great. That's really good because that tells me that, one, I can foresee the future, or those that aren't installing many, installing more as time goes by. So this should be a very helpful class for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and unbox the Aspen pump. Before I do want to show you that this is a good treatment for the mini splits. It helps the pan and drain treatment. If you're doing your biannual maintenance or annual maintenance for your customers, once you start putting the mini splits in, this is something good to spray in there. It's not an end all be all, right? So this is just helpful, but this isn't the answer, right? You still need to remove the drain pans on high wall mini splits and clean the blower wheels on these high wall mini splits, because those are the two higher, I don't want to say higher traffic, but those are the two areas of these high wall mini split systems that see the most buildup of dust and mildew and whatnot. So that's definitely something I'd recommend putting in the pan after you clean it. But okay, so let's go ahead and open this up. Let me grab my chair here. All right. If I start moving around too fast, just let me know and I'll slow down. I don't want to be getting dizzy. So when you open it up, you're going to get your instruction manual. Instruction manual is going to give you a good breakdown of all the parts, where everything goes. It's going to have all your specifications and different lift and noise rating even talks about in here. So this is a good information. If you never installed one before, and maybe you install one about a month or so from today, then going through this manual before you install it would definitely be very helpful for you guys. You're going to get a packet. It's going to have zip ties. It's going to have some double-sided tape. Most important that I really want you guys to focus on, okay, you want to use this same diameter hose. And if you notice, they don't really give you, I think they give you like maybe 6 feet, 5 or 6 feet here. The most important thing about this is the inside diameter. I've already seen a lot of contractors, they'll run larger hose, and what happens is the pump doesn't work right. This hose has to be this diameter. If you're going to extend it and you're going to get close to that max lift, you better be using the same diameter hose. If you're using a larger hose, you're never going to achieve it, and it's not going to pump out. And in reality, I wouldn't recommend going any longer than this. It comes with the hose, so you really don't need to purchase additional hose. I've seen guys, they'll take this and they'll put 3/8 copper or 1/4 inch copper in there, just like they would on a standard condensation pump. With these mini split pumps, don't do it. Just keep the same diameter hose, and you're just going to have to make it work, because otherwise you're just going to cause yourself a world of trouble and definitely some problems for your homeowner. It comes with plenty of zip ties. Every time you put one of these hose connections on, you want to make sure you zip tie it nice and tight so it doesn't come off. And then it comes with, this isn't two-sided tape, but these are it's Velcro, so that way you put one on the pump, one on the wall, the reservoir, or the unit, wherever you plan on installing it. So that way, if you ever need to remove it for service, you can just pull it off the wall or wherever it's mounted to. This is your vent tube. This is your reservoir. As you can see, in the reservoir, you have a float magnet. If you service this, there is a magnet only on one side. It's very important that if you're going to service this unit, that take this out. that you see that there's a magnet there, and that magnet has to go up. If you have your technician, or if you're going out and you're cleaning one of these and you take it apart and you clean it, there's a little screen. This little screen comes out, and you put the screen back in there. If you don't put this magnet back in correctly and you put it in upside down, if there's an overflow, well, actually, no, it's just going to overflow, because the way the pump works is this reservoir sends a signal once this float reaches the top, and it activates the pump, and the pump pumps the water out. So if you put this in the wrong way, which I've seen actually quite a few times, and I'll be honest, I've actually done it. You want to make sure that you put everything in correctly. Even with this screen, the screen's got a little track it sits in. As you can see, I was messing with it, and it has a little curve to it. So you want to make sure that you get it in that track, and everything is exactly the way it was. It's really easy to clean, but you just got to pay attention when you're putting it back together, that you put it back together correctly. Like I said, it's pretty simple, goes together pretty simple. But this vent tube, as you'll see, I have a Cooper Hunter, and I have a Samsung mini split. So that way we can look and see if there's any difference, which there are subtle differences in clearance between the two units. But both of these units, what I see, especially depending on where you put this reservoir, that once you put that unit against the wall, the unit will actually pinch this closed. And you don't want this to pinch closed. If this is pinch closed, or this is not higher than the drain pan, the end needs to be higher than the drain pan that's in the unit in order for this to really function properly. I've already heard where this gets pinched or kinked, and the contractor calls up and says, hey, this pump doesn't work. It's not working right. I need another one. And then come to find out that when the installers put it in, they actually pinched this tube, or they would just do this. And if the vent tube is like that, it's not going to work. This needs a vent tube, and it needs to be above the existing drain pan. As you see here, we have this is the wire that's going to go, and once this float goes up, it's going to send a signal to the pump, which is going to activate the pump. Here's your pump here. It's going to activate the pump, and the pump's going to come on. It's going to pull the water out and pump it out through this drain tube. If you look here, I don't know if you guys can see it, but there are arrows, and the arrows are flowing this way. I don't know if you can see that too well. You guys see that right here? There's little arrows, and the arrows are letting you know which. Okay, perfect. Thank you. The arrows will let you know which direction the water's flowing. So you obviously want to make sure that you install it flowing the right direction, and thank goodness they put the arrows on both sides. So you should be good. On this side, you have your power cable that plugs in here. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy. It's actually pretty nice and tight, so it's a good connection. You only have a 4-wire hookup. So you have 2 wires that are gonna break your signal wire, or on the Samsung are gonna go to the Samsung pigtail that they offer. If you're doing the Cooper Hunter, you'll use this to break the signal wire, and then you have your line voltage wires. It's multi-voltage. You don't have to worry about it. You basically just hook it up and go. Makes life a lot easier for the installer, so they don't have a bunch of wires they gotta either wire nut off. So that comes in pretty handy. And of course, you have your tag here that tell you what you're normally closed. Your gray is common, your purple is normally closed. So and on the other side says the same. Pretty simple, pretty foolproof for the most part. The subtle things that, when it comes to installing, that I've seen the most issues with are this vent hose and contractors not using the correct size outlet drain hose. Those are probably 2 of the most common problems that I've seen when these aren't pumping correctly. The other complaints I've had are the noise. When these get installed in these systems, they're mounted to the wall, whatever that 25 decibels that maybe this pump makes, once it's mounted to a unit, either the plastic or the wall, it just amplifies. And at night, when it's super quiet, it's going to sound like all hell's breaking loose. Yes.
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm in Tim Talk webinar on condensate pumps and high well.
Yep, she's in the Tim Talk webinar, condensation pumps. Sorry. Anyhow, so it comes with different connections, comes with your long hose. You can cut this to whatever length you want. It comes with this little elbow, and I'm going to show you different ways we can utilize these in the installation. Some applications, this is actually pretty good. And I'm also going to show you on these mini split systems, if you didn't know already, there are drain ports on both sides of the drain pan. So you're not restricted only using the left-hand side. What we want to look at when we're installing these is going to be which way you run the copper, right? You'll see the clearance is so tight on these high wall mini splits that sometimes you definitely have to pre-plan where you run your copper and drain, because in certain applications you won't be able to run them both together. You're gonna have to run them separate, or at least two different directions, and then maybe come back around with the drain line. This is another very important piece. This is an anti-siphon. They recommend installing this 6 inches after the pump to make sure that it doesn't siphon. You don't get the water siphoning water out of the reservoir. So this is something that you always want to make sure that you install. I've seen a lot of guys throw this away. So it's very important that you install this. You don't just throw it away. I've seen it get lost and thrown away in the box. For your line voltage, it does come with a fuse, a line fuse. You definitely want to put this in. There have been many times where contractors have had blown fuses, and that just tells me it saved the pump. So all you do is, like any fuse, you cut this and you put it in line with your L connection. One of your, if you're on 240, just break the line one, L1 or L2. If you're doing it to 110, then obviously you don't put it on neutral, you put it on L1. And then you also have a butt connector here, a connector coupling. You're just going to use this to slide if you need to extend this piping. We'll see that in a few minutes with the application that we're going to, depending on the application you use. And last but not least, this is a little sump reservoir. So if you have a drain pan, say this is a drain pan and you wanted to pump water out here, you could essentially put this in here. There is an opening here, and then you would take the top off of this, insert it in here, move the screen over, and make sure you install that float with the magnet facing up. And then when the water would build up in this pan, then the system will pump it out. So that's another application that maybe if you have a little walk-in cooler, a little reach-in cooler or something, obviously it's not something that flows a tremendous amount of water, but it's just another application that you could use it for. I have never used it, but you never know. It's good to have just in case. All right. One other thing, since a lot of you guys haven't installed, I'm sure you guys have installed, if you're putting mini splits in, you have installed these. These are your overflow safety switches. If I get some time, I'm going to briefly touch on where to install this, the position to put it on the coil. These are very simple to install as well. Basically, I mean, if you're installing one of these, you're not going to need to install this type of overflow safety switch, because this will shut the system down if it overflows. But some inspectors and some places they want an actual visual indication of an overflow switch or overflow safety issue. With the Cooper and Hunter, then you'd want to place this outside or somewhere visual. With the Samsung, that'll give you an error code and let you know that there's an overflow situation. So that's just something to keep in mind. Most of the time, I don't really have too many inspectors give me a hard time about this, but I have already talked to quite a few contractors that have told me that if there wasn't some kind of visual indication of an overflow, that they would fail inspection. So just something to keep in mind. We sell these at all our Tropics, so you'll be able to get that as well. All right, now let's see. Let's get to installing one of these. Okay, typically on a mini split, your copper is going to come in, bent in like that from the out of the package. Most applications you're gonna see is installed. You're just going to bend those out. These are going to go out the wall, and then you'll just take your drain line and go out the wall as well. So that's if you can do that, by all means. Even if you don't have to, I don't know. I would recommend trying to install these units in this application or piping it this way as much as possible. Of course, there are some times where when you install this mini split, you may not have an exterior wall on this side, or maybe you're above a window and you kind of come out the left side of the system. Of course, we're looking at the back of it, so it's the right side here, but if we reverse it, it'd be the left side. Then you're going to have to pipe everything like this. But if you can use a gravity drain and extend your copper, come out the back wall and gravity drain it, by all means, that is definitely the best way to go. But there are going to be applications where you won't be able to do that. So with the Cooper Hunter, you can remove this drain line if you need to. There's a little tab in here. It's going to be kind of hard. Can't really get the camera in there, but there's just a little clip. When you unclip it, you can pull this drain line out and it just, slips out. You see there's the little clip there. That's what's going to lock it in place. And there's a little tab on the drain port. And you see you got your drain port there. And as I mentioned earlier, you do have an optional left-hand drain port here as well. So if you want to use this side, because you want to save room here, don't forget to move this plug over to the other side, because then you'll get water draining out both sides. But you could put the reservoir here, and probably do it this way, long side in. Like I said, anytime you do these connections, you want it, when you're done, you want to make sure you put your zip ties in there. The only problem that I see with this, and this is where you kind of start seeing what I was talking about with the drain hose. Okay, so if the wall's here, this drain hose, it's not kinking, but you could see there's like this lip, and the Samsung has it as well. There's a little lip here. I've done it before, haven't had any issues with it, but I have kind of trimmed this down a little bit to try to allow space. Your other option, not really too many options there, because you're kind of stuck. What happens a lot of times, the contractors will see this and they'll just put it in like this, and then this ends up happening, right? If you're going to do it, I would put some kind of, glue, or maybe put a little like clip here. So I don't know if you really can put a clip. As you can see, this ends up being quite a problem when you're trying to install these. Now, if you look, this is offset to one side. So it is going to be more beneficial to hook it up and have it flowing this way. You can take our connector. We can join these two hoses together. And then over here, join this on there. And like I said, you definitely want to make sure you use your zip ties to make sure that it gets nice and tight. You have a couple places here where you could shorten this up, and you could essentially move this even closer and bring this closer here, and put it here with your Velcro or your double-sided tape and mount it here. You don't want to mount it to the outside cover, because if you ever, when you take this unit apart and you have to service it, this white plastic is going to come off. So you don't want to mount that. You want to mount it to the actual back of the unit. There's some form of bracket that's actually built to the stable that's going to be going to the wall. And you don't want to mount it to this plastic here, because when you take that cover off, you'll just pull it right off. When you're on this side, like I said, this is a little better. I would honestly recommend it, because I've done it before. You got to be good. Just make a little notch here, and that'll allow your vent tube. You got plenty of space here, but that way this vent tube won't get pressed against the back plate, because there's a back plate when this unit goes on the wall, and it's going to pinch it. So you just need to keep that into consideration. And then you'll take your hose, and if you're bringing your copper out the side here, because you can, a lot of these, you can bring your copper out the right side. You can either mount this here if you really want to. You can mount it in here, but like I said, you want to make sure that it depends on where it's installed. If it's in a bedroom, you're probably not going to want to install it there. You'd probably want to install it up above the ceiling, whether it's in an attic or drop ceiling, and then run your hose. On this application, you'd run your hose one way, come back out, and then go up the wall with the copper. On the Samsung and this system as well, if you want to install this, I didn't cut this one out, but on the Samsung one I did, to show you another possibility. And this would be more like that mini lime application that I showed you earlier. So if couldn't get the mini line for you, or you were gonna do something else, you could essentially do it yourself. If you take this and you take this here, of course, as you can see, I cut out where the copper is going to go through. So you could put this reservoir right here, and this I like, because we sell at Tropic, we sell those the plastic line set covers, and you sell them in 90s. So you could essentially put a plastic 90 on the side here, and you could vent your tube, and then you can run your tube up, and you can run your copper alongside this as well. This application I really like because, one, everything is being taken care of. We're ensuring we got a good vent. It's easy to access because you can take that outside cover off, much like that mini line. And if you wanted to, you could also install the pump right around here, inside that line set cover, or up in the ceiling or the attic, wherever it's going. So that's another good application. I like this because it allows room, especially on the Samsungs. These Samsungs are great because this bottom piece comes right off. And when this is, now you can imagine this is on the wall, you're going to be able to access your drain line connection. You're going to be able to access, well, you wouldn't have to worry about it here because we would take the port out of this side and put it on the other side. So that would eliminate this being your way. Your flare connections will be the only thing here. So if you ever needed to service and get to the flares to check for a leak, or even just installing your system, you'd be able to do that, and your pump and your reservoir would be out of the way. So that's one thing that's really good about these Samsungs, offering that bottom panel to come off to allow you to access. Now, when it comes to wiring with the Samsungs, we have the adapter that plugs in here, gives you a little pigtail, and it's going to tap into the system. So that way, if you do get an overflow situation, you won't have an issue. It'll show you an error code or point in the right direction. With Cooper Hunter, it'll give you communication error. So like I said, with that, you may still have to install an additional overflow safety switch. So that could be a little cumbersome once you get everything in. If you install it behind, I didn't get that question. It just kind of flashed right in front of my face. Let's see here. I'm going to flip this over. Actually, we're going to just do it on the, should I just do it on the Samsung? No, I'll do it on both. So we're going to flip this over and basically show you where the connections, your connection is going to go on this here. Now on the Cooper Hunter, you're going to have to take the panel completely off and run your wires. And on the Cooper Hunter, you have 1, 2, 3. Your 1 and 2 are your line voltage. Your 3 is the communication. So with your wires here, we found our gray and our purple. That's our normally closed. So your gray and your purple, it's your purple and your gray. These are going to be the wires you're basically going to go in here with. The one for the signal wire, and then the other end of the signal wire goes to the unit's going to go here, and then your L1 and your L2 are going to go there. With the Samsung, we don't have to tap into the signal port, the F1 and F2, nor are we supposed to. We want to keep it on. We want to use this. If for some reason on the Samsung systems you lose this little pigtail connector, or you have to go back later on, that little pigtail connector on the Samsung is in with the instructions. So if you don't use it, I would tell your installers to zip tie it to this as well. So that way, if you have to go back, you'll always have it with the unit, because you don't want to tap in to your F1 and F2 with the signal wire like you would on the Cooper Hunter. You have your L1 and L2, that's great, but you don't want to tap in to the F1 and F2. If for some reason you lose this little pigtail connector, Samsung recommends breaking the room temperature sensor, what I'm actually going to show you right now. This, get rid of that, get some screws out. No air conditionings were harmed in the making of this video. Trust me, I'm a professional. We're going to take this off. You guys, I have done some of these instructional videos on these Samsungs on how to take them apart. So you can always look those up later if you're curious on how they come apart. I do a better step-by-step than I'm doing today. Okay, so on the Samsungs, here is your room temperature sensor. So if you do lose that pigtail on the Samsungs and you need to install either a float switch or obviously the condensation pump, so it'll shut the system down, you're basically going to find this wire, trace it back, and you're going to trace it back to your, well, that goes to the louvers. Let's see, all this back, and you can see that, but your sensors are right, and here's your blue sensor, your red sensor, tap inlet, and then you have this black one right here. Just on every Samsung, on the indoor unit, the black is going to be your room temperature sensor. They have your red, your inlet evap sensor, and your blue is your outlet evap sensor. So those are the things that you want to make sure you don't want to obviously hook into one of these. You want to hook into the room temperature sensor. And of course, when it trips, it's going to give you a room temperature sensor fault. So this is something that if you absolutely have to install one and you lost your pigtail connector, then this is the route you're going to go. But the best route, and I have seen some guys look up a schematic, right? Because essentially there's only 2 wires you're going to use here, but I don't recommend it because unless you're really good with following schematics and you know exactly what it is, don't do it because you could really, really screw up the system. So don't cut this because then you're setting yourself up for failure. Leave this on. Get the connector. If you don't have one, you lost it, we'll get you one. But if you want to, in the time being to get the customer going, you can go break the room temperature sensor. And this also applies to the multi-position air handlers, as well as the basically any system that Samsung offers. The ducted systems come with built-in condensation pumps. So do the 4-way cassettes. So that's not going to be necessary for you. But in the high wall systems and on the commercial big ceiling systems, they don't come with condensation pumps. So you would have to break that room temperature sensor and as well as a multi-position air handler. As far as placement, since I got this unit apart, I'm going to go ahead and give you an idea of where, if you haven't, since some of you guys haven't really been installing many of these mini split systems, so you're going to come across this because you're going to have to install one of these float switches or these overflow safety switches. So this is your control box here. You need to power it up. You're going to use your L1, L2, and then you're going to have your little sensor here. This is your little sensor. Okay. Now, this is a little clip here. If you don't want to use this clip, this is a good clip for like auxiliary drain pans, but you can remove that. And then you have 2 options here. And these are based on the diameter of the coil, the tubing that's in the coil. So I usually tell people check the return bends and kind of size it up and use whatever one you're going to need. And when you find the one you're going to need, you take the one that you don't need off. I'm pretty sure that this one is the wider, the bigger copper tubing. And then this little thing on bobber here is going to go face down. It's pretty tight, so it makes it a little difficult to get in there. I've done this before, I swear. Okay, so these two little connectors, or these 2 little sensor ends here, when it touches the wire, it's going to bridge that connection, and it's going to tell the controller to shut the system down. You have the top of your drain pan here. I'm sorry if the light's not too great. Let me see if I can turn it. So your top of your drain pan is here. I always recommend installing it to the opposite side of the drain port. So if you're using the left hand drain port, then I would put it on the right side. If you're using the right side drain port, put it on the left side. But you're basically this is gonna push into the coil, and it's gonna go it's gonna clip into that copper tubing. And then you wanna make sure that this is at least a 1/4 inch below the top of the drain pan, because you want it to catch that overflow well in advance. But you don't want it too low, because then you're gonna get nuisance calls of overflow safety issues that you don't want to have to deal with. But just like any mini split system, these blower wheels and the drain pans are going to be your highest maintained area, or what you're going to have to do the maintenance on the most. Once those of you guys that don't install many of these, I recommend that you put the customer on an annual maintenance or even biannual, and you learn. If you need training and you want me to come out to your warehouse, or you want me to come out to the job site, I will walk your guys step by step on how to disassemble the system pretty quickly. Once you do it a few times, even with the Cooper Hunter, even though it's a little more labor intensive, there's some more screws and things you have to do. I'll walk you through it and make sure that they maintain this well. So if you can get your homeowner on at least an annual maintenance where you can pull the blower wheel out, clean the blower wheel, and pull the drain pan or clean the drain pan, that's just going to help you, one, establish a long-term customer, and two, make sure that the homeowner is happy and you don't get that water running down the wall. Aside from that, for the most part, the things you want to be careful of when you're installing these is the placement of the reservoir. You want to make sure the reservoir is not obviously to the side. You want to make sure it's level, and then you want to make sure you secure all these connections. You want to make sure this drain tube or this vent tube is clear, not kinked, unobstructed, and above the level of the drain pan. So for instance, if this was back here, you can see that that drain tube is going to be, that vent tube is going to be above the level of the drain pan to make sure that this works properly. And this would be another thing, if you're installing this, this is something that also has to be maintained. So keep that in mind when you're installing these, because you're gonna have to get to them. You're gonna have to service them again. As you can see, it's a small reservoir, right? So it won't take long for this to fill up with algae in certain situations, and it is not recommended. As you see, there's not much room to put pan tabs in there, so you shouldn't be putting pan tabs in there. With these, you're gonna use the pan and drain treatment, and a good cleaning is going to be your best defense against getting this built up too much. Other than that, I think that's about it for the most part. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. Do we have any questions that Todd's really good at answering questions, so he probably answered everything. He actually probably corrected some of the stuff I said.
No, you did a great job, Tim. I think we're all set.
Okay. All right, I'm going to take this head cam off, and because I'm getting a headache. Oh, there we go. So we can switch over to the other cam. That'd be great.
Okay, question number 1. Which of the following statements is correct? A, condensation pumps come pre-installed in all high wall units. B, installing a condensation pump in a high wall mini split requires a separate line voltage supply to power the pump. C, when installing a condensation pump in a high wall mini split, it is important not to exceed the lift rating of the pump. And D, mini split system condensation pumps are self-cleaning and require no maintenance. Okay, question number 2. True or false, it is not recommended to install a P-trap before the condensation pump. Okay, question number 3. Which of the following does not apply when installing a condensation pump on a mini split? A, ensuring the vent tube is not pinched. B, using the correct diameter drain hose. C, noise caused by an on and off cycling of the pump. D, how often the system will be used for heating. Perfect. And then the last question, true or false? If given the option, it is always better to use a condensation pump to remove condensation over the normal gravity drain.
That is false. You should only use a condensate pump when you absolutely have to. Otherwise, use the gravity drain.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely sure I did mention that quite a few times, but I do want to address one quick question before we move on. I saw somebody asking about the magnet. That magnet is what, just like any float switch, right? You know, on the SS2, they use a little magnet. So if that magnet isn't faced the right direction, it's not going to signal the brain of it, if you want to say, to shut that system off. So that's what the magnet there is. It's there to let I'm lost of words. Todd, you're better with terminology than I
It
am.
makes the switch connection.
Yeah, someone said something, I was trying to find it back in the chat, something about pump prime issues. Is that a question or?
If you install everything correctly, you're not, it's a self-priming pump. So even if there's air bubbles that build up for some reason or another, or the system's not used for, maybe they only use it, I don't know, 6 months out of the year, it is a self-priming pump. So they shouldn't have any priming issues, provided you installed everything correctly. If you had that vent tube in there, or if the vent tube is kinked, then yeah, you may have some priming issues. But if you install it correctly and follow the directions, you'll be fine.
Awesome. Well, why is the siphon important?
The siphon's important because you don't want to have, okay, so it does self-prime, but you don't want to have that pump priming every time it starts, right? That's just going to put undue stress. The priming part of when the system primes, that's when it puts the most, because you're basically a dry pump, and that water is what cools the pump. So if you're priming that pump every time it starts up, you're going to blow through those pumps. So that anti-siphon ensures that water, because especially if you're running that tube up and down below the unit, that it doesn't continue to siphon that water out of that reservoir in the drain pan.
And
how
the
durable
last thing,
well,
yes.
yeah, how durable are the pumps? Well, you're not going to put it in the sock and beat somebody with it, right? But you want to utilize the gravity drain at all costs. I have never had an issue personally installing these. We've always installed them, and I made sure my guys, and when I was installing them, we made that vent tube. I went through a training before, so we were educated on how to install them, but I've never had to replace one. But now I'm on this side of the counter, and I'm getting calls from contractors. Only time I've ever really seen a problem with these pumps are in high humidity applications. As I mentioned, the tanning salon, they couldn't keep up. And the other times I've run into problems or have had to talk to contractors was the kinked or non-existent vent tube and not installing the siphon. So those three things are just something you want to keep in mind when you're installing these or you're planning an installation. So just plan out your install, just like anything else, plan out your install, and you should be okay. If it is a high humidity application, I highly recommend using, and you have to use a condensation pump, I highly recommend running gravity drain into one of our little giant pumps like you would put on a standard central AC system. That's just gonna save yourself some callbacks.